The debate around aspartame and its possible health impacts has been reignited after the World Health Organization deemed it as possibly carcinogenic. But the Canadian Cancer Society says that any evidence that aspartame causes cancer is limited and more research is needed. The expert panels that assessed aspartame found that it's still safe to consume as long as it's below recommended daily limits. Now, that limit is 40 milligrams of aspartame per kilogram of body weight. That means that an adult weighing 70 kilograms would have to drink between 9 and 14 cans of Diet Pop in a day to exceed the aspartame limit. Health Canada says that it will review the scientific data in the WHO reports and determine whether any action on aspartame is needed in Canada. Well, joining us now to unpack what we know so far about the artificial sweetener and others in our weekly medical segment is Dr. Abhishek Raut, Medical Director at Appletree Medical Group. Dr. Raut, welcome back.
Great to be here.
So what is it about aspartame in particular that makes it so interesting for researchers compared to other artificial sweeteners, Dr. Raut?
Well, I think it's one big reason. It's really widespread. It's the most widespread use as a sugar substitute, and it's the most commonly used one for any low-calorie or diet product. So researchers are particularly interested in understanding its safety profile because it has so many products that it affects. And if there's any potential link to health conditions or a metabolism issue, it's definitely worthwhile to explore. So far, what we've seen is it's been seen as safe within recommended limits by the expert panels.
And in terms of this WHO classification, it designated aspartame as possibly carcinogenic. So what does that mean, Dr. Raut? And how does the WHO determine the carcinogenic levels of certain products?
That's right. And you'll see those exclamation points everywhere, the possibly carcinogenic. And it really means that there's limited evidence suggesting a potential association between the substance and cancer. Now, the classification is really based on evaluating the available studies and looking at the data, and it's really performed by expert panels. So in the case of aspartame, the classification really comes from the studies that have shown some inconclusive evidence of a possible link to cancer, but that certainly means that there is need for further investigation. But it's important to note that does not mean that aspartame definitely causes cancer. It just means that we need more research and vigilance.
So what does this most recent designation mean for Diet Pop lovers watching this right now, Dr. Raut? Are they safe as long as they consume the recommended limit, or should they maybe reduce consumption in any way?
Right. So that's just keeping in mind that that classification is really based on some limited evidence, and it doesn't establish a direct link between aspartame and cancer. So as long as individuals are consuming aspartame in the recommended limits, which we were talking about earlier, it is considered safe by expert panels. Keep in mind that when we're looking at this classification, aspartame now is in the same classification of possibly carcinogenic as aloe vera extract or many pickled vegetables. So keeping that in mind, it doesn't mean it definitely causes cancer. It just means you want to keep limits and moderation when you're consuming it.
And how does aspartame compare to other common artificial sweeteners like sucralose, for example, in terms of health risks, Dr. Raut?
Right. So sucralose in particular, if you compare it with aspartame, very different chemical compositions, very different metabolic pathways in the body. Recent scientific evidence also looking at sucralose with some concern about safety as well. We know that sucralose can certainly cause issues with our gut biomes. And there was recently one study that came out that there was concern also about DNA damage. So, overall, what we're saying is we're seeing that all of these artificial sweeteners are having some data associated with it for either damage or gut microbiome use or even cancer now. So certainly moderation is key regardless of which sweetener.
All right, Dr. Raut. Now, meanwhile, there are plenty of health concerns around regular sugar consumption. So how does regular sugar compare to artificial sweeteners in terms of health concerns?
Right. So with regular sugar, we know the data very well. They have their own set of health regulations. We're looking at weight gain, dental issues, increased risk of chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes. And of course, artificial sweeteners have their own concerns as well. They're non-nutritive and don't raise blood sugar levels, but there are these other concerns here as well. So really, it's a matter of picking one evil versus the other. I think the key here is having a very balanced approach to it.
And just about 30 seconds left here, Dr. Raut. But as a doctor yourself, how many times have you come across cases in which there are health-related concerns around the consumption of aspartame?
Right. So I see what I see with my patients is some potential side effects, gastrointestinal discomfort or headaches, but these are relatively rare and in general considered safe.